Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post. Bud Light effect. Companies terrified of becoming the next Bud Light. From Newsmax, retailers scale back DEI initiatives ahead of holiday shopping season. And from CNBC, retailers brace for DEI blowback and lead up to election holiday shopping season. Retailers are afraid of offending any of their customers. They don't want to offend their regular customers, they're normal people. They want to sell to everyone who wants to buy something. They're afraid of getting Tractor Supplied or Bud Lighted. And they should be afraid. Bud Light taught them an incredible lesson. From Forbes, Bud Light boycott effects endure, brand drops to third. That's from a brand that used to be the #1 brand for years. Retailers are bracing for blowback related to DEI policies in the lead up to the 2024 presidential election and the critical holiday shopping season. The big companies can't take it anymore. They can't go out there on a limb and take a risk like this. Every time a company gets called out on it now, they start to back down because it's not part of the culture anymore to accept that diversity, equity, and inclusion policies are some kind of human rights or civil rights type of situation. It's not. It's a political ideology. You can't hide that. So customers get offended when they push this nonsense. They won't support the companies. The companies get financially damaged, and then the stock gets hit. I mean, there's no defending this anymore to say, oh, well, we believe in this, and our stakeholders include people of every race and rainbow, and no one cares about that anymore. It's no more justification. Everyone knows it's political ideology. And just wait until January when the new administration comes in. Stephen Miller, who is the head of America First Legal, who has been after these companies, suing companies, threatening companies, going after companies, is now going to be the Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy for the President of the United States. Which is to say, yes, he will deal with immigration. Immigration is something he's very well known for. But his very close number 2 is to push against DEI, to push against discrimination. He actually went ahead and created this separate ACLU, this separate legal organization, even though he's not an attorney, to protect people from being discriminated against. I mean, they've gone after company after company. America First Legal will continue, but now he's going to be working inside the White House with free reign to go after things like this. And this article actually came out just before the president was elected. So you can imagine companies are even more focused on getting rid of the nonsense. Some companies are even concerned about attending public DEI events, while others are strategizing on how to avoid criticism over their existing policies and programs. Quote, there's a clear sentiment in the retail community that no one wants to get Tractor Supplied, according to one retail industry analyst. Retailers are facing a tough equation as they head into the all-important holiday shopping season, this time over DEI initiatives. Companies are bracing for blowback related to policies around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and are hoping to avoid alienating customers who may deem the brands too woke or not woke enough. They always like to throw in the "oh, not woke enough." Even though people on social media will make comments about how they won't support a company if they're not woke enough, the only boycotts that actually really changed anything of significance were the Bud Light boycotts. Those worked. The Target boycott also scared Target and also cost Target a lot of money and made them turn around and fix themselves. But the Bud Light one is the one everyone's always going to remember. That was the first social media boycott that really made a difference and really changed the direction of these companies. Some companies are tapping outside advisors for advice on how to avoid criticism. CNBC spoke with a number of retail industry insiders, strategists, and staffers who spoke on the condition of anonymity to do so candidly because they're even afraid to draw any kind of attention to themselves. And look, you don't want people in this world to live in fear. Everyone should be comfortable to do whatever it is that they believe in and be their authentic selves. And if they have their own company and they want to represent that in their company, everyone should be able to do that. You shouldn't have to live in fear. Unless you do this, unless you push ideological agendas into consumer products and try to abuse your power to force your ideological ideas on customers, on people that had a trust relationship with you that you violated to push your own sick ideology. And do I call it a sick ideology? Yes, I do. It is sick, it's inappropriate, it's discriminatory, and it has no place in American society. But you want to have those personal ideas, that's your business. But don't try to box people in and force them to accept it and deal with your new version of normalization. And if you're going to do those things, then you should be living in fear. Fear that your customers aren't going to buy your product, or your employees will leave your company, or people will destroy your stock because they won't support a company like yours. Just because there's a Ben & Jerry's or one or another other kind of screwy companies that want to push their social agendas and that's part of their brand. Yeah, when the company was started, it was part of their brand. That's what they do. It's not for every company. Consumers will not accept that across the board. It's not something you could just do if you feel like you want to do it someday when you have an established brand and consumer relationship. And if you try it, you're going to find out no one will accept it. Bizarre social causes were always part of Ben & Jerry's brand. That's why it works okay for Ben & Jerry's, but it doesn't work for Bud Light. It doesn't work for Target. It doesn't work for other mainstream brands. Quote, retailers left to their own devices would like to be very proactive on DEI, said the consultant. But now they don't want any of their views to be public because they want to be able to sell stuff to everybody. And it's become such a stupid political issue. Well, it's a stupid ideology and it's a stupid premise. So when you try to jam it into a consumer product that already has an established relationship, yes, you are going to get blowback, and no, consumers won't put up with it. The retail industry's concerns over DEI come after a number of high-profile consumer-facing companies, including Lowe's, Tractor Supply, Ford, and Molson Coors, walked back some of their equity and inclusion policies in recent months. The changes including ending sponsorships for Pride festivals and cutting ties with the Human Rights Campaign and LGBT advocacy group. Across industries, some companies have also cut positions for DEI roles. Between 2019 and 2022, new jobs for Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officers spiked nearly 170%, according to a LinkedIn study. But over the last year, new jobs for such roles have fallen while companies like Google and Meta have cut staffers and downsized programs that fell under DEI. When explaining their decisions to cut back on DEI, some companies like Lowe's cited the recent U.S. Supreme Court decision that outlawed affirmative action as a catalyst for reviewing their policies. Privately, many retailers are concerned about losing customers and becoming the subject of conservative backlash, according to industry insiders. Last year, Anheuser-Busch owned Bud Light and Target faced severe blowback for marketing campaigns and product collections geared towards the LGBT community and saw sales fall as a result. As retailers prepare for a potentially less than stellar holiday shopping season, they want to ensure they don't do or say anything that could end up having the same effect. To see these companies that were pushing this stuff in our faces so aggressively, so inexcusably, and really, super aggressively, to now have to walk on eggshells because they don't want to lose $1 of our potential business is something great to see. That's what's called winning. The growing concern around public DEI efforts, especially during a highly politicized election year, has cast a pall over certain industry events. In late September, the Retail Industry Leaders Association hosted its annual Summit for Corporate Communications Professionals. This year, the event was tied together with RALA's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Leaders Council, which led some retailers to be concerned about the optics of attending, according to a person who was present and spoke with participants who expressed reservations. RALA declined to comment. They don't even want to be seen with these guys at industry events. This isn't like taking Dylan Mulvaney's face and putting it on a can and using that for media. This is like, who cares if you're going to a convention and there's some people speaking at the convention or whatever, you want to sponsor that, give them $5,000 or $10,000. These big companies do this kind of thing all the time. Now they're afraid to even be seen with them at a trade show, like a business networking get-together. One former executive who didn't attend the event but frequently advises publicly traded retailers, which means they're a public company, said it makes sense that some companies would be concerned about attending because the optics of it are maybe not so great because you can't get anything from it. You can't get anything from the association. If you hadn't pushed it so hard, I wouldn't be doing a video about this. No one would care. No one would be interested in it. We wouldn't be talking about it. But when you use your company relationship with your consumer who has a personal identity with your product, when we follow brands, part of that is part of our identity. It's part of who we consider who we are. We identify with the things that we purchase. So it does matter if you make a choice to support a consumer branded product. You're not McDonald's because you shop at McDonald's, but it is part of what you do and sort of who you are in a very small way. But it could be a very small permanent way, especially if you have a multi-year relationship with that consumer brand. We all know this in branding. The companies certainly know this. This was a deliberate abuse of power, and it's one of the things that really gets me very disappointed with these people and angry at them. Because they knew exactly what they were doing and they thought they could get away with it and they didn't respect their customers. Buying a branded product is a social contract. It's a promise. You don't break that promise. Quote, the tide is definitely turning against DEI initiatives, said the former executive who spoke on the condition of anonymity so he could do so candidly. Quote, I do think it has a lot to do with the election. If you're a CEO and you're looking at it, is Donald Trump going to win or is Kamala Harris going to win? We now know that Donald Trump won. And if you're self-serving, I can see why you'd need to hedge your bets. The person called it a no-win situation, especially for major retailers with large customer bases that can span both sides of the political spectrum. It's an absolutely win situation. In the multiple years of branding, it was never considered necessary or expected to push cultural values unless they were traditional American family values in any kind of association with any kind of products that were marketed that I can possibly think of. Even so, that hasn't been done for years now. It's not really current or common. So there is no mystery here. All these companies ever needed to do was explain to consumers why the value of what it was they were selling them, product or service, was worth more than the money it cost them to get the product or service. How does it benefit the consumer? That's literally all they had to focus on. They should not have been abusing their power. This was a very simple equation. It's not a no-win situation. It's a win-win-win situation by just delivering for the customer and not violating the trust in the brand relationship. At a top New York City advisory firm, one strategist recently told CNBC that a primary concern facing their retail clients is DEI and how they should be preparing for potential backlash, or how they can avoid it altogether by preemptively walking back certain policies and practices. Some of the discussions included whether to participate in annual gay pride parades and how to communicate any policy changes to staff. Is anybody buying your product because of the parades you're participating in? And when I say anybody, I don't mean like 1/1,000,000th of 1% of your customer base. I mean like, is 1% of your customer base actually buying your product because you're attending what you now identify as controversial parades? Even if they're not controversial parades. The only reason to sponsor any of these things is if there's going to be some big July 4th parade, something you could easily say, look, it's about America. We don't hate America here. We love our country and the opportunities that it gives us. Sponsor that. Sponsor veterans. Sponsor things that everyone would say, okay, 10 years ago, that was a normal thing to sponsor. Even 20 years ago was a normal thing to sponsor. Anything that would be controversial in any way, why would you invite that into your company and potentially damage your stock, get into trouble over something that isn't going to create any customers? If you want to have your employees attend and do what they want to do, they can do that without associating the brand with anything that's controversial. And if some things are controversial and that upsets people that, oh, well, it should be mainstream, it should be normalized, not controversial, well, then that's for the activists to figure out. Corporations and brands are not activists. They're not nonprofits. If people in their personal capacity want to do things like this, go do that. But don't take a consumer relationship that you've already established with an existing brand and use it for activist purposes to try to change the country. We don't want to see any of that. Quote, retailers are constantly concerned about what they put out there. I think there's a higher pressure on them. said Sonia Lipinski, head of consulting firm Alex Partners Global Fashion Practice. Quote, if you think about the time of year, they're going into their biggest selling season right now. If we look at a moment in time, the last thing they want to do is potentially upset consumers or generate some bad publicity about what they're doing or not doing. So they're highly sensitive and highly concerned. It does make it hard to believe that these consultants actually do get paid significantly good money. They do. And yes, Christmas is generally a very big season for any stores, any retail stores. A huge percentage of their annual business is coming up right now. It's coming up for the Christmas season. Yes, you should never be risking your brand and your customer relationships for activist nonsense. Lipinski very cleverly pointed to a recent consumer sentiment survey that Alex Partners published, which showed less than half of millennial consumers considered it very important for a retailer to embody their values in messaging, interactions, and marketing. Quote, then we go down from there. So 45% for millennials, less than 40% for Gen Z and Gen X, even though we think we hear Gen Z cares more about this, and then boomers was 16%, she said. When I'm buying a product or a service, I'm not thinking about the company's social values. None of us really are. It's not a big deciding factor. Unless it was like Target, where it's like, okay, now I can't shop there because these people are promoting this complete craziness and I'm not going to endorse this by going to their store. And yeah, I'll do a couple videos about that. And I did do some videos and they did well. And I wanted people to see what I thought of it. And people generally thought the same thing. No, we're not going to support that. But otherwise, as long as they're not obnoxious about their social values, who even keeps track of these things? CNBC continues. However, that doesn't mean that retailers shouldn't be thinking about DEI when it comes to their business strategies, according to their consultant. Quote, if I'm designing a product line or even a service or something like that, and I don't have kind of a wide representation of people who have been creating that, I think I'm very quickly going to miss the pulse on what my consumer thinks about, said their consultant. So even if they're saying they don't need to see it coming through in messaging, they will need to see it coming through in product that resonates and experiences that resonate and service levels that resonate with them. And that's going to differ based on who they are and where they come from. That is when you select a certain niche market that you're going to market your product to and say, okay, I have one common product. This product I might offer to people of this age, people of that racial group, this country, that marketplace. Or you might make variations of your product or service and say, I'm going to offer this to this market at this high level, or I'm going to make it a little cheaper and I'll sell it to that market. That's things that people normally do. You go and you do the research. And when you do that research, you do the research in a disciplined way. If you're not disciplined about it, for example, if you're going to make a high-end version of a product, which sometimes people do this, they'll make a watch that's like a $100,000 watch, but they'll have a low-end version of that watch that's as little as, let's say, $5,000 or even $2,000. And the reason you do that in marketing would be to create a high perceived value for the brand. If I buy the $5,000 watch and I don't go for the $100,000 watch, it's still associated with that $100,000 brand. This is like a disciplined approach and market study thing that you would do. Anyone could do it. It's just research. It's just homework. It's not something that you can make decisions about based on skin color or sexual preference or what country you come from. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.